Hello, hello.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you doing, Mythic Spider?
Pretty good, actually.
Good.
First thing I'd like to get at is we've talked a while back, and I would just like to say, touching briefly a little bit on what you said earlier with the having to look intelligent thing, it is and I don't mean this with any insult. English is
Sure.
not my favorite language, so I apologize if there's any that comes out here. It is really nice to see you and other people engaging in civil conversation because the few times I've been around, especially when you first joined, it was, well, you know.
Yeah, I
So
was different.
it's really nice to see this. And I'm really happy to hear. I am, on a personal level, very curious about your communist thoughts. Because I, kind of akin to myself, you seem to be a bit of an odd man out when it comes to communism. Because you probably don't remember, but we had a long text thread in one of the daily debates. I'm a monarchist, but not exactly a normal one. You appear to be a communist, but not exactly a normal one, because you use the term communist, but as far as I can tell, you seem far more akin to a. I know that technically it's one and the same, but Marx can go fuck himself. A socialist. Do you use the term communist more just because of the book relation of the two, or like why communist? Because you don't seem to align like in the slightest with any of the actual self-calling communist ideologies. Marxist Leninism, Stalinism, so on and so forth, Maoism. Like, you don't seem to agree with some of the fundamental basics of those,
Sure.
a lot of which has also contributed with the disdain for violence, which is completely fair, obviously. But what, in a nutshell, I suppose I'm asking what you are and how that came to be, because I don't
How it came
recall
to
you.
be.
Yeah.
Well, that's a long story, but I can try. So, as far as communism, I'll keep this as brief as I can. Basically, I have the Wikipedia article pulled up. Communism is a political and economic ideology whose goal is the creation of a communist society, a socio-economic order centered on common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange that allocates products in society based on need. A communist society entails the absence of private property and social classes, and ultimately money and the state. Communism is a part of the broader socialist movement. So, what we have here, socialism does not necessitate the dismantling of hierarchies, of unjust hierarchies, right? It necessitates the dismantling of a specific one, which is the destruction of the workplace, right? Like, or the destruction of the workplace hierarchy, basically. But
Hmm.
communism is an expansion of that. It's not just workplace democracy, it's societal democracy. It is dismantling any kind of unjust hierarchy anywhere ever at all. Like it says here, the ultimate goal is to get rid of money as a unit of exchange. It basically just the earth becomes a house. You know, it's not like you live with your family and you go around sometimes you'll exchange money, but like in a house, if you need something, you just go get it. Like, that's my point. So I would like the earth to be like a large house, if you will, where everybody living in it is just one big happy family. And I know that sounds very out there, but that's how I view it, and that's why I call myself a communist. I also call myself a humanist for that reason. I think that humanity is capable, not only capable of doing that, but must do that in order to keep it themselves from going extinct. I think that is a necessity. It's the great filter. So that's why I consider myself a communist.
Okay. So I suppose here comes the clash. Your humanist views. I heard a little bit previously, but I was cooking tuna casserole for my wife, so feel free to correct at any time.
Hmm.
But you hold the belief that you could be a. I'm not. I didn't hear any description of means, but that you could effectively convince. I think the example you used was first yourself, then your house, then your neighborhood, then the city, then the state, or whatever the hell, to all share that belief, and that
Hmm.
would allow the peaceful existence of that belief. Is that right?
Well, yeah, if the broader society thinks a thing, then that thing is going to become part of the culture, and once it becomes part of the culture, it becomes part of it's enforced. It's enforced by the society.
Okay, but then I suppose my question is: do you believe that that could ever actually be achieved?
1000%.
All right,
I
there
think
we
it
go.
has to.
So I have just to get this out of the way, I was not national military, so I suppose this is either going to go very add to the conversation or get me yelled at. But I have I've been and deployed to Mali and to Afghanistan, and in both of those places, I ran into a lot of what you could certainly call extremism.
Okay.
But I also saw, most of all, there were plenty of groups that all understood that by their continuous opposition to each other, they were guaranteeing they were all going to fucking stay in the mud. Yet, even while directly acknowledging that, they all believed that to be better than compromise. And let's be real here, those are in actually, like, I motherfucker been there, those are in actually low resource environments where people by the thousands, well, the time, not really right now specifically, sort of in Mali, I guess, were dying from armed conflict where shit is, so to speak, real. And people have a lot more incentive to actually cooperate or face rather literal death. And yet, even then, no. They chose, especially in the case of Mali, fully aware that they were all losing. Like, no one was winning the big picture by going that route. They all chose violence. Why in the hell would, say, in a developed country, and let's use my I view myself as Austrian and Hungarian, so let's just use both. What would convince Austrians or Hungarians to ever all just drop everything and agree when in a place where you will most certainly die long term, either demographically or otherwise, if you don't, no such thing is likely to happen within any sane amount of time in those places? How does that thought process work? How do you believe that when in places of actual complete total war and strife, Sudan for fuck's sake, there's nowhere near any kind of thought process even approaching actually doing that? What makes you think you could have that achieved in a place where there's nowhere near the incentive to do so?
It's happened before. It takes a long time and a lot of progress, and it probably won't happen within my life. I mean, it definitely will not happen within my lifetime. Let's be real.
Probably, yeah.
I will never live to see this world. It is one that I simply wish to push the earth a little further toward, push the species a little further toward, and that's fine. In the meantime, let's go back to the Revolutionary War between America and Great Britain, right? That happened.
All right.
Great Britain and America were deeply, deeply at odds with each other. They had such conflicting ideologies that they went to war. They started killing each other over it, right? So that happened, and then over time, they resolved it, right? They resolved it. Eventually, the fighting stopped, and Britain was like, okay, this is no longer worth it. We surrender, right?
If I may.
Sure.
I don't, because I understand where you're going, but I do want to remark, you said this yourself a second ago, I don't think you're taking all of the history into account, because that particular era, I'm a little bit more well-versed in than others.
Okay.
And ideology was only a major factor. It was obviously still very much a factor, but in terms of determining how the two powers acted towards each other, ideological shenanigans dropped off hard past 1812 because both countries stopped giving a shit. The British didn't see much value left in the New World, and the US, whether or not you're an American in here and you think you guys won, even if you did, it was not exactly at a very effective cost. And there was no real, what's the word for it? It's the same kind of
Payoff.
thing that happened between the Germans and the French.
So
There
you got
was
about
no
5 minutes, by the
real
way.
moment. All right, thank
5 minutes.
you.
Yep.
There was no real moment of like both sides like sitting down and saying, okay, yeah, we're cool, and like hashing out that kind of thing. There was just a succession of killing, and as we can see now, especially in the case of that's actively reversing, at least in my opinion, you're seeing once again the renewal of an Anglo split between the U.S. and the rest of the, not the rest of, but the Commonwealth once again via the Orange Man and whatnot. That's a very, I mean, no insult. That doesn't really work as an example of cooperation because both sides lost, but never, like, there was no compromise. There was no, like, joint agreement. They might have been allies later on, but they continued to compete and brutalize each other constantly in economic warfare well until post the Victorian era. Britain lost. The US killed the United Kingdom. There was no compromise. They dismantled their empire despite being officially allied by force during the Cold War, allied briefly with the Soviets in the 50s against the British in an attempt to maintain their empire. The US was fundamentally, ideologically, I suppose, yes, still opposed for a long while after, but once again, it became economic and it never really stopped. There was no cooperation. I think I lost myself a little there with I hope you understand what I'm saying, though. There was no peace. The British just lost brutally.
But we have peace now.
For now. And
I mean,
as
I don't.
the British, via the British being essentially a direct vassal state to the point it's probably never going to get let in the EU again because of the degree of influence the US has directly in it. It's the closest thing I can think of to being Like you ever heard the special relationship thing, like line from the British?
I have not.
It's what they describe the American-British relation as. The special relationship is why they joined both the war in Afghanistan and Britain. It's why they've always been joining U.S. conflicts and otherwise related things a lot more than anyone else, even in NATO and otherwise. The British are ordered to go where the Americans want them to because, well, some intelligence leaks back in the day showed that the British were just at America's heel, but more so, once again, it's a vassal overlord relationship that even the Canadians don't really have with the British. Like the British, there's no cooperation. That's what I'm saying. It's the British subjugated, not particularly brutally, but nonetheless by the current now hegemon of the Anglosphere, which is the U.S. Sure shit, not them.
Are we subjugating the British now?
Once again, not brutally, but yeah. The U.S. is continuing to take action that heavily benefits themselves economically while heavily detrimenting the British. They pushed for the British to conduct Brexit to better U.S. markets at the direct expense of British ones. They pushed to continue trying to convince the British government to rely on American trade, which is literally about 10 times less profitable than European trade, almost exactly just due to travel time and other things, on the promise that continuous American development would come more investment, so on and so forth, and then
In about 1 minute.
as soon as better markets arrived, thank you. As soon as better markets arrived, dropping the British for those markets, a la Asia and some of the Middle East, I think.
I think at the end of the day, my point is the United States and Britain, regardless of whether you think the United States is actively harming Britain right now, they have an agreement. They've reached a peace, right?
I suppose, but certainly not to the ideological agreement that we're purporting it to. Or is that the right word? Fuck. I'm hoping that's the right word.
So there was a point in time where the United States and Great Britain were so at odds with each other that they were literally killing each other. And now we have reached a point, hundreds of years later, mind you, okay, I understand that, where they're not. And not only are they not, they seem to have a pretty buddy partnership, you know, and you can say whatever you want about like how America's actually hurting the British or whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not well versed in that area, but at the end of the day, they both have terms of agreement and they are at peace with one another. So that demonstrates to me that it's possible. You know, it is possible for two conflicting groups, even when they're killing each other, to eventually, whether it takes centuries or whatever, reach peace. And that's all I'm looking for in this world. So your time's about up. You can have the last word real quick, and then I'm going to go to the next caller.
Yeah, thank you. But to that, I just raised a simple thing of
Sure.
The Chinese and Russians were each other's main geopolitical enemy less than 140 years ago. It only takes a decade for that centuries of peace making to die. All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a wonderful evening. Thanks for coming on, Mythic. Hi, thanks so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you all know that I love and appreciate everybody in my community, whether you can support me financially or just by liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. It helps way more than you know. That being said, I do want to give a very special thanks to my tier 4 subs, which would be Space Timid and Hot Take Andy. And thanks so much to my monetary subscribers from any of the tiered subs or anybody who gives me money in any form, including going to my Patreon shop, donating money to me directly. It all helps way more than you know. If you do decide to help me financially, you can get some really cool perks like early access to content, exclusive access to censored videos, also some really cool badges next to your name. Even if you can't afford a monetary subscription, just watching, sharing, and commenting on my content helps way more than you know. Thanks again, and I will see you all in the next video.